Let's go.
The truth, the truth set you free.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Veritas Machine. Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing? Pineapple to the Big Apple from Maine, Spain, baby. I am Tony D, your host. Welcome. T-minus 10, let's go. All right. Well. Welcome to another one. I'm Tony D, your host. This is the Veritas Machine. Welcome to another program. Today, we got something pretty interesting. Now, as you know, hey, Tap, Denise, how's everybody doing all the way over there? Everybody make sure that you give our friend Tap a follow. He has been hit with the thing that makes you that rhymes with it's after the letter number 18. Should we just call it B18 plus B18 plus one? So we're wishing him the best and the fastest recovery ever. And don't give him medical advice. Okay, just I'm sure he's got it covered. Stop telling him to drink orange juice and hydrate. All right. That's right. Everybody give Tap a follow. A lot of the creators that I know that a lot of you guys watch get their research from Tap. Okay. And they message him privately and they ask him permission. So Tap is like the information the godfather of info. All right. So make sure you give him a follow. We appreciate it. So let's move on with the show. Thank you so much for joining me once again from the Pineapple to the Big Apple from Maine, Spain. Sunday morning. Sunday. Now, today, I'm going to take you back in time once again. JFK Jr. was a pilot with excessive training hours. He was friends with Donald Trump. He was a married man to the lovely Bessette. He was married to the Bessette Empire. These are two empires, the Kennedys and the Bessettes joined. Now, some of the information that I've gotten in researching in this story, that on the last day and in the last moments of his life, allegedly JFK and his wife were having marital issues due to his publicity, all the attention that he was getting. It was not something that the Bessette family liked. They were low key. So they met. John actually at the time also had a broken ankle. Although he was a fairly new pilot, he had more than enough training, more than enough training to, and over 50 hours of night flights. He had more than enough of the training under his belt that he needed to make this short flight to Martha's Vineyard happen for the wedding of his cousin. So that's kind of like the background of what's happening. So we're in New Jersey. I am bringing you to a gentleman who is a pilot, and we are going to go into this story and he is going to tell you from a very experienced pilot point of view what exactly happened. Now, there are a lot of course, conspiracy theories regarding JFK, that he's still alive, blah, blah, blah. I don't know about that. I mean, have your own opinion, think what you want, do what you want. Just don't hurt other people, right? But I don't know, Cap. I think you just made a mistake. But we're going to see, and you're going to make your own opinion, and you're going to form your own judgment. Let's get into it.
It's now been over 20 years since the tragic airplane crash that killed John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Carolyn, and sister-in-law Lauren Bessette. So why do we need another JFK crash story now? Since the world first learned of John's missing single-engine Piper Saratoga on Saturday morning, July 17, 1999, there have been numerous
July 17th. Okay, you see where it's going?
documentaries, news stories, magazine articles, and YouTube videos produced on the subject. I think
the Piper Saratoga was actually a new plane that he had just recently purchased. Hey, good morning.
It's safe to say this crash has been one of the most scrutinized general aviation crashes of all time. But here we are, over 20 years.
And by the way, this is a subscriber-only chat, so if you're jumping in and you would like to join the chat, all you got to do is wait 10 minutes, and we'll be with you shortly.
Later, and you would still be hard-pressed to find an accurate accounting of what actually happened. Unfortunately, but somewhat understandably, along with the highly focused...
Now, as you can see, all in through here, you're going to see a lot of these charts where the debris was found from the plane. You'll see some debris here in probably, what's that, NTSB hangar. And you'll see the areas of intended arrival, the area of departure. You're going to see the flight map up on the top left there. Pilots have to go through, even for the shortest flight, a great deal of steps to ensure that their flight is safe and that they don't fly into something or somebody.
Interest in this tragedy came a lot of misinformation in the form of speculation, misinterpretation of facts, and jumping to conclusions. And frankly, there's been a collective throwing of John Kennedy private...
I'm sorry, but what was that movie, Office Space, where he did the game and he invented the game Jumping to Conclusions? It's called Jumping to Conclusions. Got it? And okay. Never mind.
Private pilot under the bus. It's time to set the record straight, and that's what we're going to do in this video.
Damn, this
what
kid
does
was
the
good
evidence
looking.
show, and what doesn't it show? So, what really did cause John's plane to crash in the water just 17 miles short of the Martha's Vineyard destination airport? The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, listed the probable cause using boilerplate terms such as pilot's failure to maintain control and spatial disorientation, along with haze and, quote, dark night, listed as contributing factors.
Now, in all flights, especially if there's an accident, you are going to get some kind of report here. And I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I know all this stuff about flying. This guy explains it really well. He's an experienced pilot. Everybody has to have a lot of training, especially if you're going to do a night flight with your wife and her sister. You don't just get to jump in the plane. They don't let you just take off. Okay? He was a highly trained guy. Hey, what's going on? Good to have you. Welcome.
So was John a bad pilot? Was his training inadequate? Was his airplane poorly equipped?
All great
or did
questions.
it malfunction in some way? Was he careless, reckless, arrogant, or just having a bad day? The short answer is no, 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 and no. Look,
okay,
if we dismiss this act.
So look at that. More subs for Tap. Everybody go give Tap a sub there. He's he got hit by the thing. And now he's handling it. There you go. Now, let's just I want to backtrack this a little bit because this was a guy who, like I said, very
orientation, along with haze and
proficient,
quote, dark night, listed as contributing factors. So was John a bad pilot? Was his training inadequate? Was his airplane poorly equipped, or did it malfunction in some way? Was he careless, reckless, arrogant, or just having a bad day? The short answer is no, 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 and no. Look, if we dismiss this accident as just another case of failure to maintain control, we're missing key information discovered by accident investigators that provides a much better understanding of all the factors that caused this fatal crash. Let me just say this right off. This is not going to be some far-fetched conspiracy theory. I am an instrument-rated private pilot
There he
with
is.
over 4 decades of aviation experience. I have spent countless hours researching the information contained in the highly detailed NTSB.
And you could find this gentleman's page at the bottom of the very detailed description. You will start to notice that my descriptions are becoming more detailed regarding, and that's why I'm getting a little more love from the people at YouTube. So let me explain that real quick. My thumbnails, when you do what YouTube wants you to do, they're going to throw you a little biscuit. All right. They're going to throw you a little bone. So they threw me a little bone. They put me on a couple recommended lists. So a couple of my videos are starting to climb up. I have deleted a lot of material that I believe would otherwise put me in a category that will not get to other people. Unfortunately, you associate with certain types of information, and YouTube are going to say no. They're going to say no. So, we got it going now, and pretty good understanding.
Aviation accident final report.
Yeah, Tap. He had a lot of
considered
experience
every
flying. He was
conceivable
not.
scenario
He
that
was
might
fairly
have
new as a
caused John's
pilot,
accident.
but not
One by
a bad one.
I eliminated every link in the chain of events that isn't supported by the hard evidence. In the end, we're left with only one sequence of events that completely explains why a highly trained, very proficient pilot.
Now, we just have to admit, let's just look at this guy, okay, for a second. That's a handsome dude, all right? And, I'm on the, never mind. I'm not even going to say it. Handsome guy, okay, from a journalistic standpoint. A handsome man for sure. Definitely got his looks from his mama.
In the end, we're left with only one sequence of events that completely explains why a highly trained, very proficient pilot ends up in a fatal loss of control accident. Now, nothing I'm going to say will change the tragic outcome of this accident. At the end of the day, John was acting as pilot in command. By doing so, he alone has the final authority and responsibility for the operation and safety of flight. With that said, it is my hope to clear up the mountain of misinformation surrounding this accident.
For sure.
In this video, we will recreate John's flight path, the weather conditions, and the time of day that John took his last flight. You, the viewer, will be riding in the same front left seat of the Saratoga where John sat as pilot in command. You will see what John saw and what John didn't see. You will be in John's seat during the entire 3-minute accident sequence that ended with the Saratoga slamming into the water. Let's run through a quick review of some background information. John F. Kennedy Jr. was the only son of the 35th U.S. President John F. Kennedy. Most people who are old enough can tell you exactly where they were when they heard the tragic news that President Kennedy had been assassinated. Ironically, most people probably remember where they were when they heard John's plane was missing. At the time of his accident, John was 38 years old and had been married to Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy for almost 3 years. In the previous 4 years, John had been working as editor-in-chief of his political magazine, George. John had earned his private pilot's license 15 months prior to the accident. 2.5 months before the accident, John upgraded from his single-engine 4-passenger Cessna 182 to a 1995 single-engine 6-passenger Piper Saratoga. The Saratoga, with its 300 horsepower engine and retractable gear, was faster and better equipped than John's former Cessna.
So I have been in the written process. A friend of mine, I live near a private airport, pretty close to a private airport. A couple friends of mine have their own planes. I've gone up a couple times with them. I've done a lot of my written instruction and getting some flight time in with some of these guys. And it is it is not easy.
the time of the accident, John has already logged 310 hours of flight time, with 55 of those hours being at night. John had also accrued 238 hours of flight training flown with certified flight instructors, or CFIs. 238
Well, welcome, Joe.
hours of training.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah, you
That
could always
is
go back.
twice
I'm gonna
the amount of training that
I'm
a
gonna put this
typical
one on. Yesterday we got interrupted because of here's what happened. I'm pretty sure I got reported. Okay. And so, but what's going to happen is I'm going to appeal the strike and they're going to give it to me just like they did with the ones the other day with the Mafia Monday. There are people coming onto my lives and they're reporting my page. And the reason I know why, and Tap would probably agree, is that yesterday when I did the live and it got cut off, we had already gone through the intro of that TV show. Okay. The intro, that's copywritten music, man. Okay. We went through like 5 different pieces of copywritten music before the stream was cut off. So bugger off. Okay. Like, come on now. Seriously. It's just going to go back up, man. And then people are going to want to see it even more.
300 hour
they don't understand how it works.
Receives. Although John was only certified for flight in VMC, or visual meteorological conditions,
the trolls actually have put me in the position where YouTube is now rewarding me. Oops, that backfired. You keep watching my videos. You keep going back and back and back. You're helping me, baby. Thank you.
He had passed the FAA written instrument rating exam on March of 1999. John had also begun.
And when I get to my 100,000 subs, which is going to happen, I'm only bringing one person with me, and that's Tap. Tap can come along. All right. All these other creators can
flight training for his instrument rating, satisfactorily completing 12 of the required 25 lessons. He only paused on his instrument rating training to focus on flight training in his newly.
People want to know where all the noise is coming from. Okay, that's the thing. It's science, man.
Acquired Saratoga. I think we can all agree, as a private pilot, John Kennedy did not skimp on
my
flight
first
training.
rodeo.
John was planning to attend his cousin's wedding in Hyannisport on Saturday, June 17th. John planned the Friday evening flight from Caldwell, New Jersey to Hyannisport with a quick stop at Martha's Vineyard to drop off his sister-in-law, Lauren. The Piper Saratoga was capable of flying the 175 nautical miles to Martha's Vineyard.
That's a nice little plane.
One of the last things John does before leaving his office and heading to the airport is to log into the Weather Service International's pilot brief website around 6:32 p.m.
Okay, now this is something that pilots, all pilots will do. They're going to check the weather. They want to know the conditions that they're going into and whether or not their aircraft has the capability of going into those conditions. John was certified for only visual flying. Okay, so he had to use his eyesight. He was not certified yet to fly by instrumentation. All right, this is part of what caused. I believe the training. If you're going to go up at night. You need to be instrument trained. That's just my opinion.
The route briefing John obtained included en route weather observations from 15 different reporting stations along his intended route of flight. These observations indicated visibilities varied from 10 miles along the route to 4 miles in haze at the departure airport.
Now you see that? He's checking the visual part of the report. Right. VFRs.
Almost every station.
So make sure you hit that like button if y'all don't mind. If you're liking this video, I already got one unlike, but again, that's fine too. That helps too. Like people are hilarious. Space cake in the house. So yeah, we're getting into the pre-flight of JFK Jr. right now. If you just joined me, hit that like button. Obviously, if you're in the chat, you are subscribed. If you are not in the chat, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and it will let you chat in 10 minutes.
Was reporting clear skies. No cloud was forecast. The temperature dew point spread was 6 degrees, which is well outside the normal range for fog. In short, visual meteorological conditions, VMC, prevailed along the route of flight. John had planned to arrive at the Caldwell Airport between 5:30 and 6 p.m. on Friday evening.
Isn't that beautiful?
After doing some last-minute shopping, wife Carolyn would meet him at the Caldwell Airport. John's planned departure time would have allowed
Just
plenty of
flying.
time to conduct
Just see it. Just flying is just amazing.
a 1-hour flight during daylight hours, but anyone who knows anything about aviation understands delays are not unusual. There's no doubt John was a busy guy. He's dealing with deadlines at work and isn't able to get away from his office until around 6:40 p.m., much later than he had planned. John picks up sister-in-law Lauren around 7 p.m. and arrives at the Essex County Airport in New Jersey around 8 p.m. Anticipating John's arrival, a ramp worker has already moved John's Saratoga from the hangar to the tarmac.
Dude, that's nice.
Carolyn arrives at the airport around 8:20 p.m. John has completed his pre-flight preparations and is ready to go as soon as Carolyn and Lauren are buckled into the two rearward-facing club seats. I was able to plot John's actual route of flight using data from the NTSB report and from Air Traffic Control's radar track of John's final flight.
So we are getting a minute-by-minute tracking of what exactly, all right, is happening here.
John was familiar with the route to Martha's Vineyard, having flown to or from the destination area about 35 times in the previous 15 months. John flew at least 17 of these flight legs without a CFI on board, of which 5 of these were at night. John was well trained and qualified to act as pilot in command on a VFR night flight.
Okay, so he was perfectly qualified. The conditions were right, according to his qualifications, and all good, right?
It's almost 8:30 p.m. when John starts the Saratoga single engine.
And from this point, I believe JFK Jr. has less than an hour to live.
John runs through standard checklist items. He checks flight control.
Okay, now we are taking you inside the cockpit of the actual type of aircraft, the actual make, model. Inside, this is these are your controls. This is, the whole bit.
Controls, flight instruments,
Instrumentation.
and listens to the Automated Terminal Information System, or ATIS, broadcast.
Oh, look at that detail. They put his, I think, is that his tail number that they put on
The
there?
ATIS broadcast is a standard feature at an airport with a control tower in
That's an
operation.
interesting detail for the reenactment.
Caldwell Information, Quebec, 21140, wind 2205, visibility 5 in haze, sky clear below 12,000, temperature 31, 2.19, altimeter 3007, landing and departing runway 22.
Okay, so we are reenacting the flight here in the old, a little simulation.
With standard checklist items completed, ready to taxi, John contacts the Caldwell ground controller for taxi clearance.
Caldwell ground, Saratoga 9.
I did say reenactment before, I hope. I think I said the word reenactment of the flight here.
253 November, ready to taxi with Quebec, right turn out northeast bound. Saratoga
I
9,
didn't think the
253
cartoon on the
November,
runway
ground,
was a
taxi
plane.
runway
I just
22,
want to make it
Papa
clear.
Bravo, Runway 22 via Papa.
This here's a real plane.
Saratoga 53 November.
Taxi light on, parking brake released. It's 8:34 p.m.
It's Grand Theft Auto.
John taxis the Saratoga the short distance to the departure end of runway 22.
But this is fascinating. So you're going to see everything that happens in this flight. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. I'm glad you said something. This here is actual footage live of him taking off in his plane. We are now right there in the house. Had little windows where you put your cigarettes. Just kidding. Taxiing. And I think we could move this forward a little bit. I mean, we're just taxiing out the. I mean, Jesus, how much time does he put on here of taxiing?
Intentionally staying at a low altitude to
I want to get us right about here. We're taxiing a long time for that little airport.
Right turn for the right downwind departure. Adjust the power setting to 30 inches manifold pressure. And adjust the prop to 2400 RPMs. John levels the Saratoga off at about 1,900 feet and turns to a northeasterly heading. John is intentionally staying at a low altitude to remain below New York's Class Bravo airspace. In fact, he would need a clearance from Air Traffic Control, ATC, to enter the Class Bravo airspace. Like many VFR pilots, John has chosen not to request flight following or radar services from ATC for this flight, nor is he required to do so for a VFR flight. That's another topic for later discussion, but for now, just know it's doubtful that flight following
this guy did a great
change
job.
the outcome of this flight.
And this is fair use. And also, please go to the description and give this gentleman a follow. He does a lot of cool stuff about aviation. If you like that topic, let me just get his handle here real quick. There, biscuits, and I'm gonna give it to you. Bum, 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 bum. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's do this. He is FS Mania. So I'm going to put that in the chat here. And you could search this gentleman. Okay. Very, lots of thanks to him for this information because people need to see this. People need to see the actual technical thing. Okay. This guy had visual contact with the ground the whole time. If there was some big operation, like in Batman with Bane, that took the plane and snapped it up into another plane, they had another plane. People would see this. Okay, even though it was at night, there was still a lot of visual. He could not fly unless he could see where he was going. Okay, so the visibility was good. So I call BS on all those conspiracy theories that they got him in the plane. It was this guy, and they got no. This is what happened. It's like he was up in the air for like 10 minutes.
John maintains this direction of flight for 20 nautical miles or about 8 minutes until he reaches the Hudson River.
All right. So JFK Jr. And that was his tail number on the reenactment there. That's a nice touch. Passenger River. They're giving you all the angles
of the Tappan Zee Bridge. John banks left to a more northerly heading up the river.
And the simulator is reenacting the exact conditions of that night. Everything, visibility, barometric pressure. I mean, everything is, temperatures. Everything is completely matched and simulated. That's why they call it a simulator. Thank you.
Nearing the outer limit of New York's Class Bravo, John gently pulls the Saratoga's nose up by easing back on the yoke to initiate a climb to his planned cruise altitude of 5,500 feet. It's likely that around this time he inputs the Martha's Vineyard airport identifier into his GPS. Kilo, Mike, Victor, Yankee. He hits the direct to button and confirms. After 6 miles on this heading, he begins a right turn on course, remaining clear of Westchester Airport's Class Delta airspace.
Okay, so very shortly, you are going to see the sequence of events that initiates the accident. That's so badass.
John levels off the Saratoga at his cruise altitude of 5,500 feet. He makes adjustments to his heading to intercept the GPS course to Martha's Vineyard. From the radar track of John's flight, it's apparent that John used the autopilot to maintain his altitude and course. The Saratoga tracks a direct course to Martha's Vineyard and remains at 5,500 feet for the next 100 miles, or approximately 37 minutes. It has been suggested by some that the Saratoga's autopilot is the one piece of equipment on board that could have potentially saved John and his passengers' lives. I agree, an autopilot can reduce the single pilot cockpit workload, especially during busy times such as departure and arrival. In this particular instance, however, I'm very suspicious that John's use of the autopilot may have in some ways been a link in the chain of events that led to the accident. More on this in a few minutes. The 100-degree course continues just south and parallel to the Connecticut and Rhode Island coastlines. Even in the dark and hazy conditions, John is still able to maintain visual reference with the lights along the coastline. As the pilot of a high-performance single quickly learns, it's important to stay well ahead of the airplane. Staying ahead of the airplane means being prepared for the next phase of flight well before the airplane gets there. While still in level cruise
That's a
with the
term used
autopilot
a
doing
lot
the
in
work of
aviation.
maintaining altitude and heading, John would use this time to tune radios to the proper frequencies, calculate time and distance needed for a normal descent, and run descent checklist. Although John was not required to communicate with air traffic control while en route on this VFR flight, the Martha's Vineyard Airport has a control tower. John will need to contact the tower controller for landing clearance. John will also need to listen to the Martha's Vineyard ATIS, Automated Terminal Information System, broadcast prior to contacting the controller. John tunes his number 2 radio to the Martha's Vineyard ATIS and flips it to the active position. He's too far away to pick up the broadcast, but at this altitude, he should start receiving it in the next few miles.
See, that is getting ahead of it. He knew it was coming, so he flips the switch. That is the perfect example of a prepared pilot getting ahead of his tasks.
Problem. John has made a very small and very common mistake that every pilot is prone to make. He has mistuned the frequency for the Martha's Vineyard ATIS by 1 digit. John tuned 127.25 when the actual frequency is 126.25. Since currently he's still beyond the ATIS broadcast range, John doesn't realize he has the wrong ATIS frequency tuned in yet. The other frequency John tunes is 121.4, which is the Vineyard Tower frequency. Once he receives and listens to the ATIS broadcast, pressing a single button will flip the tower frequency into the active position. He typically makes initial contact with the tower controller when he's roughly 10 to 15 miles out from the airport. The initial call would be something like, Vineyard Tower, Saratoga 90253, November, 15 miles to the east, inbound landing with information, Charlie.
Okay, we're going to just scooch a little forward here. Okay, we're going to get into some of the final parts of what exactly.
On a climb, the bank angle continues to increase.
So right here.
It's another right turn. What happens next makes it clear John is suffering from the onset.
Right here is about where. Okay.
Although for the moment everything seems to be under control, John's currently heading away from Martha's Vineyard, out into the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. And to make matters worse, he has now completely lost all outside visual references. The only way for John to know which way is up is to rely completely on his instruments.
This was reenacted from several different research points that he announces in the beginning of the video. And you can go back and check it out.
What John is about to encounter has caused even highly experienced veteran pilots to lose control of their aircraft.
Now here it is. He's already made 2 mistakes that have started this sequence.
Back towards Martha's Vineyard at a bank angle of around 28 degrees. The aircraft climbs slightly and then begins descending
No
at about
worries.
900 feet per minute. John rolls out of the turn on a 090 heading.
And also, I put it in the chat, this guy's page, and in the description, so you can go watch his stuff if you're interested in aviation. He's got a good page.
Towards the vicinity
And this
of the
is
airport
fantastic.
again, momentarily slowing the descent. Wings are level, and if he can just hold this heading, he will surely see the airport within 5 or 6 minutes.
But when this is over,
within
obviously.
only about 8 seconds, the aircraft begins another right turn. What happens next makes it clear John is suffering from the onset of spatial disorientation.
All right, now this is
The
where
Saratoga begins descending again, and
that,
the bank angle continues to steadily increase.
disorientation begins in this turn.
As bank angle increases, rate of descent increases. John
And
knows
right about now, I would imagine that he's having a little bit of a itch of panic, okay? Because he's starting to see some things that he hasn't seen
pulling
before.
back on the yoke, trying to arrest the descent.
Right about
With
now.
the Saratoga in a steep turn that's only making it worse, John's now entered into what aviators call the graveyard
A
smile.
graveyard
He advances
smile.
the throttle.
What happens is it is a smile shape, but you are banking and you are going down at the same time. That is the graveyard smile.
Full power. While on a climb, the bank angle continues to increase all the way to 125 degrees. The nose is pitched downward 30 degrees. The airspeed indicator goes off the scale.
That's it. And that's what happened, ladies and gentlemen.
The aircraft slams.
And that's how fast it happens. Okay? Just from that point of time where you recognize that there's a problem.
Really see the airport within 5 or 6 minutes.
Everybody
Within
get,
only about
anybody get goosebumps right there?
8 seconds, the aircraft begins another right turn. What happens next makes it clear John is suffering from the onset of spatial disorientation. The Saratoga begins descending again, and the bank angle continues to steadily increase.
And this is probably where the passengers and they are beginning to have a discussion regarding, is everything okay? What's happening? John, what's happening? Why is this happening? Why are we going? What, John? What's happening? John, it's okay. It's okay. Let me handle it. John. So this, and I believe they were able to reenact some of those from some of the recordings, which I don't even want to listen to them. Okay, honestly, I don't want to hear that. This is rough enough. Okay, I can look at the rough stuff, but if I don't have to, why should I?
As bank angle increases,
Here we go.
rate of
One more
descent
time.
increases. John knows he's descending. He's pulling back on the yoke, trying to arrest the descent. But with the Saratoga in a
Just
steep
making it
turn,
worse.
it's only making it worse. John's now entered into what aviators call the graveyard smile.
See that right there?
He advances
Oh
the
God!
throttle
Look at those
full
instruments.
power. While on a climb, the bank angle continues to increase all the way to 125 degrees.
It's not climbing because he's diving, and he doesn't realize that he's diving and not climbing.
The nose is pitched downward 30 degrees.
And
The
now they're
airspeed
wondering what's
indicator goes
happening.
off
What
the
is
scale.
going on there? Can we get up?
The aircraft slams into the water, inverted at a speed of 250 knots.
Whoa.
It's 9:41 p.m., an hour since taking off from New Jersey.
So when he was in the air for an hour, and when he crashed, he was inverted. He was upside down when he crashed.
John, 38, Carolyn, 33, and Lauren, 34, all died instantly on impact. Based on the fact that the flight was made over featureless water at night and the possibility that the horizon could have been obscured by haze, it's hard to argue with the NTSB's boilerplate probable cause findings. The pilot's failure to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night, which was the result of spatial disorientation.
Mm-hmm.
The question that looms for me is, what caused the Saratoga to begin the initial right turn off course that went unchecked for 30 seconds? Without that right turn, this accident doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Let's replay the accident sequence to see what makes the most sense as to why a well-trained, very proficient 310-hour pilot lost control of his aircraft within minutes of his destination airport.
By the way, think of this, is that when this sequence began, they were able to see, they had a visual on the actual runway.
Without having received the ATIS broadcast, John begins descending from his 5,500-foot cruise altitude. He knows he needs to stay ahead of the airplane, and Martha's Vineyard is only about 12 minutes away. He needs at least 9 minutes to descend 4,500 feet at 500 feet per minute. John disconnects the autopilot's altitude hold mode. He uses the autopilot's electric trim rocker switch to pitch the aircraft nose down for a descent. NTSB calculated performance parameters indicate that Saratoga's descent rates were varying between 400 and 800 feet per minute. Now, there are aerodynamic explanations as to why manually trimming an aircraft for a steady descent rate can be tricky, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole now. Just know for the first 3 minutes and 40 seconds of descending, John is focusing on obtaining a constant descent rate. During these first minutes of the descent, even though John is preoccupied with establishing a steady descent rate, the aircraft
so in your descent rate, you obviously don't want to just
the
speed right in. You have to take it easy.
Investigators found the Saratoga's horizontal situation indicator, or HSI, with the heading bug located at the 095 degree mark. That's pretty convincing evidence that John was most certainly using the autopilot's heading mode to track the inbound course to Martha's Vineyard.
And he put in the wrong numbers.
Until the Saratoga is descending through 3,000 feet that John attained a 600 feet per minute steady rate of descent. Also, he's descended at a faster rate than he intended. If he continues descending at the same rate, he will be at only 1,000 foot altitude within 2 minutes.
Now, keep in mind, he also had a broken ankle with a cast and crutches. Okay? Make sure you hit that like button, guys. Leave a comment, share this out.
And he'll still be 20 miles.
And if you're not subscribed, if you want to jump in the chat, all I got to do is hit that subscribe button banner stuff. Let's go.
In the airport. That's too low, too far out. So what if at 2,500 feet, John decides to stop descending? It's what I would do if I were in John's seat. He's descended a little quicker than planned, and he doesn't want to fly at only 1,000 foot above the dark water for the last 20 miles of his trip.
Yeah, he had to know right there.
Also,
something's
from
wrong.
His previous experience of numerous flights into Martha's Vineyard, John knows he should have already picked up the ATIS broadcast before now. He needs to double check the frequency to make sure it's properly tuned. He needs that ATIS information now because he needs to contact Vineyard Power in about 3 minutes. He's flying towards the airport at 160 knots, and he's starting to fall behind the airplane. A sense of urgency is creeping in. He really needs the autopilot to fly the Saratoga straight and level to give him enough time to double check the Martha's Vineyard ATIS frequency. Leveling off at 2,500 feet seems like a good decision to me at this point. And it's at precisely 2,500 feet indicated on the altimeter in the dark cockpit.
Well, I don't know whether it was medication or not. I don't know whether it was medication or not, but I mean, if he was not taking medication, had some kind of pain, you're just not 100%. You got a broken ankle. You're not 100%. I personally, I wouldn't have flown with a broken ankle. That's just me.
John reaches over to re-engage the altitude hold mode, but in his haste, he has actually inadvertently disengaged the heading mode. The two buttons are located side by side, and it would be easy to press the wrong button if you were in a rush.
You cannot press the wrong button.
He's flying the airplane straight and level
when you're flying.
John grabs his flashlight and his notepad or his chart, trying to verify the ATIS frequency. Now remember the fuel imbalance. With a right wing heavy fuel imbalance and without the autopilot to maintain the Saratoga's heading, the aircraft has begun a subtle 13-degree bank to the right. Momentarily distracted with looking up the ATIS frequency, John doesn't notice the slight right bank or the aircraft is still descending.
Wow.
30 seconds after the right turn started, John glances up to his instruments and realizes not only is the aircraft still descending, but now it's also in a right turn. He doesn't have time to troubleshoot while the autopilot isn't doing his job, so he quickly hits the autopilot's master disconnect switch. Easing back on the yoke, he pulls the nose up, adds left aileron to level the wings.
So here he is trying to correct it.
John climbs back up to 2,500 feet and levels off. Now he's flying the Saratoga by hand with reference only to his flight instruments.
Now, this is minute by minute reenactment simulation coverage. This video also, in my opinion, debunks any of the other stories about midair, whatever he was. Come on. There were witnesses. The plane mechanic valeted his plane out. You know, come on.
John keeps the Saratoga flying straight and level for the next 50
What did
seconds.
Bain jump in here? Oh, so you think you already crashed?
I'm certain John decides to forget about tuning in the ATIS. He needs to keep all his attention focused on the Saratoga's instruments. There are worse things than contacting the tower without the ATIS information. John presses the button to flip the Vineyard Tower frequency into the active position of his number 2 radio. All he needs to do is turn back towards the airport and contact the tower in a couple of minutes. The shoreline that John had been relying on for visual reference is now directly behind him. There's nothing to see out of the windshield but blackness.
Lost
Scanning the
horizon.
instruments, John realizes he has turned about 50 degrees to the right of his course to Martha's Vineyard.
No point of
Puts the
reference.
Saratoga in a 28-degree left wing down bank to get back on course. The Saratoga climbs slightly up to 2,600 feet.
Yes, they are.
In the 28-degree turn, the Saratoga starts descending at 900 feet per minute. John levels the wings when he reaches a heading of 090. He pulls back on the yoke and momentarily slows the descent.
Well, I mean, my question of any detonation in the tail would be when. And, you know, these instruments are not wrong. They catch
Head
everything.
movements, gentle turns, acceleration, deceleration, etc. all can contribute to the onset of spatial disorientation, and the effects are starting to set in. John's senses are screaming to him. He feels strongly the aircraft is still turning left. He applies right aileron to stop the turn. He's convinced something must be wrong with his instruments. He doesn't want to descend. He pulls back on the yoke. He's still descending. He pulls harder and adds full power. John wasn't past the point of no return yet. Recoveries from unusual attitudes are practiced in primary flight training and instrument flight training, but they are practiced in daylight and without the hideous effects of full-blown spatial disorientation. A nose-down, steep turn, power-on, unusual attitude can be recovered from quickly if the pilot can rapidly interpret and completely trust what his instruments are telling him. You can hear the engine is racing. The VSI is showing a descent. The altimeter is winding down. The airspeed is increasing. The head.
See, they have all the information and data from every aspect of this plane. There's nothing on this plane that investigators would not be able to tell based upon the recordings, the weather, it's all here. And that's why they're able to reenact it and just basically plug it into the simulator, and you've got all your conditions, and they could just watch what happened. That's how these simulators work now. For sure. And for a long time, even back then.
Right turn, pulling back on the yoke in attempt to stop the descent at this point only causes the bank angle, the rate of turn, and nose down angle to increase into the classic graveyard spiral. What we must do to save our lives is reduce power while simultaneously leveling the wings with ailerons. Only after the wings are level do we pull back slightly on the yoke to ease the nose up and arrest the descent. When the descent has stopped, we can add power back in, continue to ease the nose up to climb to safety. I can only imagine the immense intensity of the confusing and debilitating effects John suffered from the onset of spatial disorientation. It's so easy in hindsight for pilots to quickly pass judgment saying, that would never happen to me because blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The truth is, what happened to John can happen to any pilot. It definitely could have happened to me and my family on more than one occasion. Many times in aviation, the difference between success and failure, life and death, is razor thin. Now don't forget, at the time of this accident, John has logged 238 hours of flight instruction from FAA certified flight instructors. Way more instruction than the average private pilot receives. I think this accident begs the question, Is there something in the private pilot training syllabus that needs improving? It has been suggested by some aviators that there is insufficient awareness among VFR pilots about the hazards of night flying. The FAA only requires a student pilot to log 3 hours of night flying to qualify for a private pilot's license. That license subsequently allows a private pilot to fly with passengers at night as long as there is a minimum of 3 miles visibility and a 1,000-foot cloud ceiling. As pilots, we are often faced with less than ideal circumstances to complete a flight. As we build flight hours and experience, every pilot can look back and recall moments of near catastrophe. Aviation, and particularly general aviation, is often conducted in a hostile and unforgiving environment. Fortunately, most pilots live to learn from close calls, and we become better pilots for having done so. John F. Kennedy Jr. was a good pilot, described as skilled and cautious by his instructors. On this flight, John made a minor mistake tuning a radio frequency that began a chain of events that ended in tragedy. John's misfortune cost the ultimate price, his life and the lives of Carolyn and Lauren.
And
from the first day of his life, John seemed to belong not only to our family, but the American family. The whole world knew his name before he did. But John was so much more than those long ago images emblazoned in our minds. He was a boy who grew into a man with a zest for life and a love of adventure. He saw things that could be lost in the glare of a spotlight, and he could laugh at the absurdity of too much pomp and circumstance. He drove his own car and flew his own plane, which is how he wanted it. And for 1,000 days, he was a husband who adored the wife who became his perfect soulmate. He was lost on that troubled night.
Whoa, this guy
but we will always wait for him, so that his time, which was not doubled but cut in half, will live forever in our memory and in our beguiled and broken hearts.
Wow.
We dared to think in that other Irish phrase that this John Kennedy would live to comb gray hair with his beloved Carolyn by his side. But like his father, he had every gift but length of years. We who have loved him from the day he was born and watched the remarkable man he became, now bid him farewell.
He was a sign of hope for a lot of people. It's very sad. I don't even know what else to say. Obviously, you could see what happened here. And when you watch something like this and see that the hope that people place in some of these theories versus the facts, okay, it is what it is. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't do this without you. See you on the next one.
The truth, the truth, set you free, set you free.
Thank you for joining me. Make sure you like and share. We're going to see you on the next one. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. I hope you learned something. I did. I can't do this without you guys.